Teach me how to pray. Try that. Teach me how to pray. Yes, and teach me how to live. Yes, and teach me how to live. Make them one and the same. Make them one and the same. To the glory of your name. To the glory of your name. I have found a dwelling place within, and everything I do is grounded there. You have conquered death and sin. You have brought new life again. We are born again. Born again. Teach me how to pray, how to live. Yes, and teach me how to live. One and the same. Make them one and the same. To the glory of your name. Please, please. I will walk with you along the road. Daily will I seek to know your will. I will follow where you lead in my life and in my deed. I will feed your sheep. Feed your sheep. Teach me how to pray. Yes, and teach me how to live. Make them one and the same. To the glory of your name.
I'm going to read from page 77 in the New Testament. I'm going to read all of chapter 8. Then each of them went home, while Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning, he came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and began to teach them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery. And making her stand before all of them, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now, in the law of Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now, what do you say?" They said this to test him, so that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. When they kept on questioning questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And once again he bent down and wrote on the ground. When they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the elders. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus straightened up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, sir." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go your way, and from now on, do not sin again."
I think of all the things I've learned about storytelling through the years, the most important thing is that if you're going to tell good stories, you have to spend most of your time listening to people tell their stories, because everyone has a story. And if you pay attention, that's how you get it right. So in thinking about Jesus as a storyteller, I'm just very sure that he spent as much or more of his time listening to people as he did to speaking to people, listening to people to see what they're really feeling, what they're thinking, to listen, to hear the heart of the matter. And that's how he ended up at the supermarket that day. He found the marketplace was one of those places you could listen and you could watch and you could learn. He'd figured out if you want to know what people's values were, don't listen to what they say. Watch them shop. See what they actually do with what they've got. But he'd made a mistake. He ended up shopping one afternoon when everybody was there. Long lines, and there was only one checkout open. He hated that. Don't you? Well, they had the 10 items or less thing, but well, hey. So Jesus is stuck in a long line of people at the checkout, 3 ladies with carts piled high in front of him. And since they were waiting too, they'd left their carts and they had gone over to the magazine rack. One of them had gotten a magazine. Actually, it was one of these newspaper things. You know what I'm talking about? They have at the checkout. Usually has pictures of aliens on the front. Or John Travolta. But one of the ladies is reading from this magazine to her 2 friends, and they are laughing so hard they like to fall down in the aisle. Well, Jesus thought, humor. That was something he was interested in. What made people laugh? In fact, he was looking for some new material himself. Yes, he had a Samaritan joke that he'd been using that was going nowhere. He'd say, "How many Samaritans does it take to change a light bulb?" And the people would say, "How many?" And he'd say, "1, if he's good." See, that's why Jesus was looking for new material. Nobody likes people just staring at you like, what's so funny about 1 if he's good? 1 if he's good. 1 if he's good. 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 Oh, good Samaritan. Oh, good Samaritan. Oh. Well, don't laugh now. Of course, his disciples are over there in the corner going, hey, what's a light bulb? That's why he called them disciples, you know. Now that's funny. You're going to use it. I know you will. Yes. Well, he knew it would be rude to just go over and ask the women what was so funny. But he was curious. He thought maybe if he could see the front of the magazine that they were reading, maybe he could tell something about what was inside. So he went around a display until he could get an angle and he could see the cover of this magazine. On the cover was a picture of the man that was the President of the United States way back in the last century, Bill Clinton. Some of you are old enough to remember, and some of you aren't. Picture of Bill Clinton on the front of this magazine, but then he looked a little closer and saw that down in the corner there was a quarter panel, a picture of a woman. And he was looking because he saw the name. It was Monica something. Well, he didn't know what that was all about. But when he heard those women laughing, he remembered. He'd heard that exact same laugh years before. Only that time it was a group of men laughing at a woman who they said had been having an affair. And he told the men to hush. He said, y'all, just be quiet. He says, you want to laugh? You want to laugh, then I want the first laugh to come from one of you guys that's never imagined doing something like this yourself. Well, they got quiet. And then they got embarrassed. And then the story that we read says that they got up and left, beginning with the oldest. He was alone with her. Finally, he said to her, he said, you're going to be okay. They're gone. He said, now it's time for you to go too. But then he added, he said, you know, you don't have to live like that anymore. You know this story. We all know this story. And probably for one reason, it was because of that soundbite, that oft-repeated line. Let he who is without sin. Oh yeah, we know that story. But as often as I have heard this story, told or taught or even preached, I've had a thought that there was something that wasn't right. It was a story that stopped in the middle. And that's not how a story is supposed to work. That's why we tell a story, so that people can find out what happened next. But in this story, we never find out what happened next. Where'd she go? The woman, where did she go? What happened? And how did that go and sin no more work out for you? Yeah, that would be the story. But we don't know. And the men. Can you imagine those men as they were walking away? They had to be angry. They had to be angry because somebody had the nerve to question their Second Amendment rights to bear stones. Where did they go? We don't know. The story just stops in the middle. But this morning I'd like to suggest that that's one of the ways the gospel works. The old story stops where your story and my story begin. For this is not their story. It is yours and it is mine. Because we've been there. Broken. Sometimes our brokenness obvious to everyone. The consequences of our behavior and choices. Sometimes our brokenness, like many of us, because we get good at this as adults, is kept secret, known only to a few, or perhaps we are the only ones that know. But we are nevertheless surrounded, confined, imprisoned. Imprisoned by our own stubbornness and our unwillingness to be forgiven. When you're there, and you have been, and you will be, when you're there, remember this story. Hear the good news. Remember in this story that when all those men were laughing at this woman, Jesus didn't join them. He chose sides. Hers. Not the side of justice, but the side of mercy. He was with her. Indeed, I believe that would be the rest of the story. That wherever she went from that day on, he was with her. But then I would add that he was with those men too. As they walked away, they would never forget those words and what they heard that day. That it was time to lay down your stones. But then I would add that that is your story. God with you. Choosing your side to be with you now and in the days to come. They say this woman showed up again. They think it was her that came in one evening while Jesus was having supper with his friends. She came and she knelt and bathed his feet with her tears. You can have my heart. It isn't new. It's been bruised and broken and only comes in blue. It's been down a long road, got dirty on the way. If I give it to you, will you wash it clean, take the stain away? You can have my heart if you don't mind broken things. You can have my life if you don't mind these tears. I hear you make all things new, so I give these pieces all to you. If you want it, you can have my heart. So beyond repair, nothing I could do. I tried to fix it myself, but it was only worse when I got through. And you walked right into my darkness, speaking words so sweet. And you held me like a child till my frozen tears fell down at your feet. You can have my heart if you don't mind broken things. You can have my life if you don't mind these tears. I hear you make all things new, so I give these pieces all to you. If you want it, you can have my heart. If you want it, you can have my heart.
At this time, we'll continue our worship through the offering of our gifts.